Okay, power idle, look at the end of the runway, round out, let the plane bleed off speed, and then now flare. And just try to keep it in the air for as long as I possibly can. And boom, there we are. Okay, welcome everyone. Just getting set up here. And we will be on our way. Feeling good for this stream. I didn't have as many issues with the with setting up Oculus Mirror or anything like that. So as long as I don't jinx it, we should be good to go. I also have Twitch open up here, but you guys can't see that. So I will have to figure out how I can interact with it. Oh, actually, I think I remember how. If I hit this Oculus button, there we are. Okay, so all I just really want to see is, okay, beautiful. So everything seems to be working much better this time than it did last time, which is always reassuring. Seems to be working much better this time than it did last time, which is always reassuring. I need to turn that off. Okay, so today we're going to be doing some more approach and landing practice. As mentioned in the title, the reason why is I don't have a mouse in this game. The reason why I will have to do that is I do need to get some more practice in, especially with the orbit. I finally know what an orbit is thanks to Reddit. And so today I kind of just want to go through, just want to practice it a little bit more, practice landings, and that will be it for today. Not really too much, but I just more important stuff, more important things that I have to go through to be able to understand how to fly in VFR. So I'm moving my, this is very weird. My mouse isn't working. Just when I thought I wouldn't have any technical difficulties, I do have technical difficulties. Okay, seems to be working now. So again, it's going to be through FSAcademy's amazing VFR course. So let me just pull that up, and while that's loading, I will attempt to explain what an orbit is, because that was something that confused me last week, and maybe it might be something that might help some of you out. So as I understand it, an orbit is, well, literally just a 360-degree turn. It's used for sequencing, or it's used to delay airplanes that are coming in for a landing. So let's say there are two other planes in front of you, and ATC kind of needs to buy some time for those two planes to land before your turn or before you land. They'll tell you to do an orbit.
Welcome back. We're to the northwest of Liverpool, this time to look at descending, approach and landing.
Let me turn some of these things
We're flying
off.
straight and level in uncontrolled airspace at 100 knots. Maintain heading 090 and slow to 60 knots, keeping altitude 2,400 feet.
Okay. So I'll just climb slightly. I'm also going
Hold
to
an altitude
change.
of 2,400 feet.
And he said maintain 60 knots, I believe it was. So cut this off just a little bit. An orbit, you know what? I'll explain it once we get back to the airport, because I'm a little preoccupied right now trying to balance everything out.
Slow to 60 knots.
Yeah, gotcha. So let me descend just a little bit. Actually, you know what? Let me just cut throttle just entirely. And I'm just aiming for 2,400 altitude, because we did climb just a little bit there. Again, also looking for 60 knots in airspeed. So we're about time to level off. Level off and trim appropriately. So I'm going to slow down just a little bit.
Staying level at 2,400 feet, set flaps to 10 and see how the picture changes.
Okay, so one thing I need to do is trim myself out. And then set flaps to 10.
Maintaining 2,400 feet, see how the nose is lower as the flaps have made the wing more effective.
Yeah.
Maintaining 2,400 feet, see how the nose is lower as the flaps have made the wing more effective. Now set flaps to 20 and see what changes.
So setting flaps 20. I need some more speed as well.
Flaps add both lift and drag, so you need a little extra power to hold your speed. Now accelerate to 80 knots. Hold an altitude of 2,400 feet.
So I'm going to need to nose trim down as we are climbing. The increased throttle will make us climb a little bit more. Nose down a little bit more. And we should be coming up to 80 knots. Some more throttle.
Now keep 80 knots and start a slow descent, only going down at about 400 feet per minute.
Okay.
Keep descending at 80 knots and 400 feet per minute. This is how we'll fly down the initial part of the approach.
Is my trim even working? Oh, it's not working. Yeah, that's a bummer. So I'll just use the, rather than using the trim wheel on the Bravo, which is not working for whatever reason, I'll just have to use the trim buttons on the Alpha. Really not a deal breaker here.
Target 80 knots.
My bad.
Now please maintain your rate of descent and extend full flaps.
Okay, full flaps, here we go. Now the nose wants to go up, so we'll have to add a little bit more trim. Nose trim
Now
down.
that we've got full flaps, we have more lift and drag. Set and maintain a speed of 60 knots.
Gotcha.
Good. Now holding 60 knots and a slow descent of 300 to 400 feet per minute. This is how we'd fly the end of the approach as we get close to landing. Get used to this attitude and power setting and keep descending further.
Okay, and there we are, finally trimmed out beautifully. And we're just descending, my hands are off the yoke, we're just descending at a nice, about 400 feet per minute, about 60 knots, and we're still headed east.
So this is how things would look as we come into land. But if things don't go well, we perform a go-around, where we apply full power and pitch up to start a climb. Make sure not to do this too aggressively, however.
I don't know why, there's a really weird effect today, at least in the headset. I don't know if it's coming across in the stream as well. I don't know what it is. It's like maybe it's the time warp that I turned on, but everything is just a little, I don't even know how to explain it. It's kind of like it's kind of like everything's underwater. That feeling you get when you're trying to look at things underwater. That's what it looks like out of the headset for me right now. So I think I touched a setting that I wasn't supposed to touch, but we shall figure that out later. I wanted to go through some of the notes that come with FSAcademy, but I kind of forgot that for this lesson you are starting in a flying airplane and you need to take control immediately. So perhaps before the second lesson I will go through that very quickly. But for now, oh, it's my favorite. It's that runway, or sorry, it's that highway again. Kind of sinks in. That to me is hilarious. But yeah, so before the second lesson, hopefully I'll just quickly walk through, just summarize, plus add a few points and tips that I've gotten from others in the flight sim community, and we'll see that hopefully
Let's
in action
practice a
the
go
second time
around.
around.
Set full power now and set the climb attitude.
Okay, so full power. So again, P, A, and then attitude.
Use some right rudder to stay straight and keep climbing. Set flaps to 20.
And then we will trim for that while also setting flaps 20.
Set the flaps to 10.
Setting flaps 10.
Finally, retract the flaps completely.
Okay.
Good. Climb to 1,400 feet and get yourself straight and level at 100 knots.
Okay, 1,400. Oh, we're already there. And then got ourselves straight and level at 100 knots. Gotcha. Okay, and so now that we're leveling off, attitude first, and then power once that hits 100.
Trim nose down to ease the control pressure as you stabilize at 100 knots with the straight and level attitude.
Yeah. And so now that we're about 100, I will pull back just a little bit, and I will also trim nose down just to...
Now we'll head back to Liverpool and try a zone entry, approach and landing.
I will need to reduce our throttle because we need to loosen out.
Liverpool Golf Foxtrot Sierra Alpha Charlie, request VFR rejoin at Kirby.
Golf Alpha Charlie Liverpool radar, clear to enter controlled airspace at Kirby, not above 1,500 feet VFR. Squawk 5052, clearance limit, car factory.
Clear to enter, not above 1,500 feet VFR to car factory 5052, Golf Alpha Charlie.
That was my mixture that I was touching, not the throttle.
Turn right heading south. We're now looking to route to the car factory VRP, located just north of the airport. Maintain 1,400 feet.
Okay, and so once again, just take a look at the horizon while I'm turning. But this time I also actually want to descend to about 1,400, so...
Now continue south into the Liverpool control zone, and you'll soon begin to see the factory as a large flat industrial building near to the airport. Visual reference points, VRPs, are local landmarks that give points of reference to VFR flights to easily communicate their positions. Chosen for their standout features, VRPs are shown on VFR maps. ATC assigned us a squawk code, which is entered into the transponder to label us on the ATC radar screen.
Okay, and so hopefully this time I won't be lost and I'll be able to find the car factory. So I think I see it already though. It should be that white building in the background. I can use my mouse this time because I think I fixed the issue I was having.
On our way back, let's talk about the aiming point. Once established on the approach, we pick a spot on the runway and try to lock that point in the same place on our windscreen all the way down. It could be runway numbers, a touchdown marking, or something else. Continue on this heading of south and you should be able to see the car factory soon.
Actually, no, I was wrong. That's the car factory right there. That's the car factory right there. So we did overshoot it just a little bit, and then that is the runway, that is the airport. So let's turn towards there. So actually what I will do is I will turn, make sure I'm staying straight. I will turn, coordinated. I will turn, because I want to be
south
approaching
towards the car factory.
So I will turn onto a heading of west, and the reason being is so when I approach the car factory, I'm approaching from south, and when we do our orbit, I'll kind of explain a little bit. I'll kind of explain why a little bit more. So just waiting until
the target speed of 100.
My bad. There's a car factory right there, and so just give us a little bit more, or I'll just wait a little bit more, and then I will turn over to the factory. Okay, I think it's good enough. Let's make our left turn. Doing well for coordination. There's a factory, and we just want to go and maintain a heading of south. Okay, and so here you are, which we will be flying over, and then we will be doing our orbit, which is a 360-degree turn soon. It's not explained in this lesson, but hopefully I can get this in before we get to the car factory. But once we're done our 360 turn, we will technically be on the downwind for, I forget what runway that is in front of us. And so that's why when I'm going on my 360-degree turn, I will turn left.
Maintain 1,400 feet.
My bad. Just kill throttle a little bit.
Golf Alpha Charlie, contact Liverpool Tower 126.355.
126.355 Golf Alpha Charlie. We'll report to ATC that we've reached our clearance limit, the car factory VRP. Golf Alpha Charlie, car factory.
Golf Alpha Charlie, make right orbit for traffic, call complete.
Right orbit Wilco, Golf Alpha Charlie. Start a 360 turn, known as an orbit, to the right, as instructed by ATC.
Oh, we're turning to the right. Okay. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to be talking much while we're doing this, while we're doing our turn here. So one thing you want to do is the turn coordinator is not moving. Huh, that's odd. Why is the turn coordinator not moving? Yeah.
You need to be making a 360 turn to the right.
I know, stop giving me attitude.
Target speed of 100. The landing attitude will be just like what we saw earlier, which we used to fly down towards our aiming point. As we cross the runway threshold, move your gaze to the far end of the runway, and then use peripheral vision to judge your height. Then we'll pull the power back and raise the nose to the flare attitude, which is just enough to reduce your rate of descent, and touch down on the main gear first. Then we'll smoothly allow the nose wheel to land and let your speed fall off with the power still at idle. Target speed of 100.
We're fine then. Okay, so that didn't work out as well as I had hoped, because my turn coordinator for some reason is not working here in Flight Sim. I don't know why. I'll probably have to ask about that and see what's going on there. But
Golf Golf Alpha Charlie orbit complete.
Golf Alpha Charlie, enter right downwind, runway 27, number 1.
Right downwind, runway 27, Golf Alpha Charlie. Make a left turn here to fly heading 090, parallel to the runway. Descend down to 1,100 feet. Keep flying parallel at 1,100 feet until the runway threshold appears at a 45-degree angle behind you over your right shoulder. I'll let you know when to turn.
What was I saying before I got interrupted? Let me finish the lesson first, and then I'll do a debrief on the
Looking
ground.
over your right shoulder, the threshold of the landing runway seems to be about 45 degrees behind us. Now's a good time to make our right-hand turn to start lining up with the runway. Start a gentle descent and start slowing to 80 knots.
Gotcha.
Once your speed is down to within the white arc, take flaps 10 and hold 80 knots. We're in the white arc now, so set flaps to 10.
And we've kind of missed the runway just a little bit.
Hold the speed of 80 knots with a gradual descent. Now take flaps 20, speed still at 80 knots.
Flaps. Where's my flap button? Flaps 20.
Golf Alpha Charlie, cleared to land, runway 27, wind 250 at 4 knots.
Cleared to land runway 27, Golf Alpha Charlie. Okay, we're cleared to land. Finally take flaps full and slow to 60 knots.
Okay. And so I have my aiming point in sight. And that wasn't the best turn onto final, but I mean, there's not really circuit practice, and some of the instructions I think are delayed, but we'll get to that later. Speed is going down just a bit, so we're gonna add a little bit of throttle. And here we are. Once I get over the numbers, I will cut my throttle and
Power to idle and set the flare attitude.
Okay, so here we are over the numbers, looking towards the end of the runway, and we'll just pull and pull, and there we are. Not exactly on center line, but
stay on the center line as you decelerate, then vacate at the first exit on your right.
Okay, so we're just going to add a little bit more throttle just so we can get there quicker. We can have our debrief before we do our second. My rudder pedals working? Yeah, they're working. So where's my trim wheel? Oh, it's not that it's not working. It's just very. It's just excruciatingly slow. Like, I'm going at it right now, but it's barely moving in the sim. Oh, this was a. You know what? I'll turn the next taxiway. Yeah, I know that's quite annoying. Okay, and here we are. Back on the ground. Did I break it again? He's not saying anything. Okay, so for some reason he's not talking. He's not saying anything. I think it's because I missed the other taxiway. But I mean, nonetheless, that's pretty much the end of the lesson, anyways. So if you guys have any questions or any comments or any suggestions for improvement for that approach that we did, the orbit and the landing, please let me know. So I'll just quickly check and see if there's anything going on in chat. Otherwise, I just want to quickly go through and summarize the approach manual that FSAcademy has put together. I think there's a lot of really good information in there, and hopefully I can build on it from, again, my conversations with the flight sim community. And after that's done, then we will go on to what has happened. After that's done, then we will go on to the last, or the second attempt at this lesson. So let me just check, see if there's anything going on in chat. No, there's not. So let's go back to this PDF. So, I mean, generally speaking, I'm just going to quickly go through each of these 4 points here. There's not, I won't necessarily go too into detail. But yeah, so when you deploy flaps in a small plane, or in any plane really, the flaps make they do two things. So they increase the surface area of the wing, but they also increase something called the angle of attack. And so when that happens, they produce more lift, meaning that the plane will try to climb or ascend. And so that's why you get the tendency for the plane to, that's why you get that nose up tendency whenever you deploy flaps. And so it's to counteract it, either you reduce, well, you pitch nose down. Flaps will also increase drag because it's how physics works. I can't really explain it. But so the flaps will also increase drag, especially once you kind of get to, like the final flap setting. Main reason why is because rather than it, like when flaps are deployed, they deploy at the beginning, it's more horizontal in nature, but then towards the end, it gets more vertical. And so, like, let me just. So at the beginning, when you deploy, say this is your, let me see which plane I can use. Say this is your wing. The beginning, it will just deploy, horizontally like that. So it will increase the surface area on the wing. But then towards the very end, let's say, like your last notch of flaps, it will be more curved downwards. And so that increases the surface area of the wing, but also increases the drag, which allows the plane to slow down. And so in order to make sure you're not going too slow and you don't stall, that's why you increase throttle. And that's why he asked us to increase throttle once we're at flaps 30. So that's flaps and their effect. And, generally speaking, they're used on takeoff and landing for all planes. There are exceptions for when you don't want to use flaps. I believe the exceptions for when you don't use flaps are during crosswind landings. There's also one more, I forget. Someone's in the chat and can chime in, that would be great. Yeah, I'm forgetting what that second one is. Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember it off the top of my head. So, it's used mainly during landing, except for a few exceptions. In takeoff, it's used mainly. It kind of depends really on the situation. It's in some situations it'd be better off not using it, and in other situations you would need to use it. So let's say, for example, again, because flaps, especially, so I'll talk in terms of the Cessna flaps. What is this? 10 and 20. They actually flaps 10, because the flaps 20 does get it produces much more drag it produces a lot more drag than you need. So at flaps 10, because now the wing are more effective, they have a larger surface area, your angle of attack has increased, and so you're getting more lift. That's useful not just on the Cessna, but also on like larger airliners. They have their own flap settings, but it's the same concept. When you're taking off, especially on short runways, that increased lift helps you get off the ground sooner. which is obviously safer because the runway is shorter, and so you don't want a scenario whereby you reach the end of the runway and the plane is still on the ground, and so that's when flaps are really useful during takeoffs. So that's flaps, their effect, what they're used for. VRP, visual reference points. So visual reference points, as he mentioned earlier, are again just things that you look out for while you're in the sky. So for example, that car factory is quite easy to see when you're in the sky, and so it's used to help traffic understand or be able to navigate where they're going without, I mean, obviously nowadays, there are you can use the GPS, but being able to navigate, especially in VFR flight, because mostly what you're doing is you're looking outside anyway. So being able to navigate using visual references is highly beneficial. And so being able to find points of interest within the area. So for Liverpool here, it's a car factory. For example, for me here in Toronto, it'd be the CN Tower. If I'm, depending on where it is I'm landing, and there's so, but it could also just be things like malls or golf courses or things like that. Just again, points of interest that you can, or places that you can see while you're flying up in the sky that help you get a better understanding of where it is you are. That's essentially what a visual reference point is. And so, when we're in the first lesson, what was it? I forget what it was, but in the first lesson, there were two VRPs so in the first lesson you take off, you're on the river, and then you turn off the river and you basically just keep going down. And so there are two places where the instructor tunes in and speaks with ATC. I forget what they're called. I forget what they're called. Yeah, I don't know. All I can remember is just that actually should be here, no? Yeah, so the library buildings and Seaforth. So these are also visual reference points as well. And again, it helps us and it helps ATC know where aircraft are, especially VFR planes, because you don't need to file a flight plan. You can just get in, fly anywhere you want, really. And so, that would produce a little bit of chaos if they don't know exactly where it is you're going. And so the car factories here, it's used for planes that are coming on landing, just for them to kind of, know where it is, for them to know where they are and for ATC to know where they are. And so that's essentially, I think I've kind of gone around in circles and I've repeated myself a couple of times, but that's what a visual reference point is. Now, one thing that's not mentioned on here, just before we get to aiming point, one thing that's not mentioned on here is, and again, let me just quickly check chat, but if anyone has any other points that they want to bring up or anything they want to say to correct me, please feel free. But there's nothing, so I will move on to. So one thing that's not on this list is orbit. Excuse me. So orbit is actually quite, to me, it's quite funny because it's mentioned during the course, but if you're not really familiar with what it is, at least I found it quite confusing. So an orbit is exactly what we did. It is literally a 300, like a turn. You just go 360 degrees in your plane. Again, as I was talking about at the beginning, it's mainly used for sequencing. So there are two other planes in front of you about to go for a landing, and you're behind them. ATC needs to buy time, so they'll tell you to just literally just like do circles and just do orbits or 360s. A 360 is mainly if they want you to just do one orbit, whereas an orbit is just go around in circles until I call you, essentially, kind of thing. And so while you're doing that, the other two planes in front of you, they will be going and they'll be doing their landings and they'll be clearing the runway, and then that gives you, that clears up the runway for you and that clears up the approach line for you, so you can stop your orbit, get back into the pattern, and then make your landing as well. So that's what an orbit is. It's normally done at a standard rate turn, and so that would be, if I open up, I don't know if it will be shown here, but no, it's not shown on here. Gotcha. Here it is. So that would be done. Why is my other controller just chilling there? I don't know. So that's so the orbit is usually done at a standard rate turn. So that would be standard rate turn. I believe it's what, like around 20 to 25 degrees bank, but essentially what it is just 3 degrees per second turn. And so the reason why you're doing it there is just so that there's at least some standardization, because if I in a Cessna get told to do an orbit, and because ATC is trying to buy time, and let's say someone who is in a Cirrus or a TBM is told to do an orbit, our times will drastically differ because I will be going slower than they are, and so ATC would want to know exactly how much time they have on hand, or how much time that they've bought from you doing that orbit. And so to standardize things a little bit, the convention or the recommendation to do your orbit at the standard rate turn was invented. So no matter what airspeed you're at, if you turn and you make sure that like this white plane, either the wings are lined up with these two white lines here, you will be turning at about 3 degrees per second, meaning that it will take you pretty much 2 minutes to complete your turn. And so that's what that's used for, and that's why I was looking for it while I was doing my turn, but for some reason it's not working. And so that's essentially what an orbit is. I wasn't fully aware, and so hopefully some of you that are watching are able to take some value from that, and better understand what that means and what that does and why it's being used. It's essentially just a delay tactic just from ATC, really. And so once you come out of the orbit, again, you then go back, or if you're in the pattern, you go back to the pattern. If you're landing straight in, you go back to your approach, your whatever approach method you were using beforehand. So that's what that is. So let's go back to, again, if anyone has any comments or any corrections, please let me know. This is just how I understand it. I'm just learning, and I'm just hoping to pass on at least some of my learnings with you guys as well. So aiming point. So aiming point, I think I've talked about it before a little bit, but essentially your aiming point, again, there's a lot to kind of unpack, but once we're kind of flying, hopefully I'll be able to highlight some more things to you guys. But aiming point is, when you're landing, where are you looking? And it's important once you're on your final to pick an aiming point as soon as you possibly can. Reason being is that helps you determine how fast, or that helps you determine how fast you should be descending, especially on final, and that helps you that helps to prevent a scenario or situation, especially if you're landing on a place that has no lights or no PAPI lights. Fortunately, this airport does, but even then, I didn't really use it, and I don't really use it for VFR, just so I don't kind of get used to it. But it'll help you land when those lights are not available. And essentially what it is say, I'm let me see if there's a picture of a runway somewhere here. Yeah, so for example, say I'm landing and I'm looking at these white marks here. And so I want to keep these white marks in the middle of my screen or in a fixed spot while I'm landing. So if the point starts to move up, that means that I am getting way too low, or I'm descending too quickly. So I'll need to pull nose up and bring that point back down to where it was initially. If that point is moving down, that means I'm too high and I need to push my nose down so that point comes back up, and it comes back to either the center or wherever it was that you have the aiming point set. So that's the aiming point, essentially just to help you gauge how fast or how quickly or how much you should be descending once you're coming in for your landing. And then touchdown, I think I've talked about it a couple of times now, but touchdown is, so once you're past, so let's say this is your aiming point, you want to look for one feature on the runway that's right before it. So let's say for the numbers in this case, so if this were my aiming point, I would cut my throttle here after this white arc. If that were my aiming point, I would cut here, and so on and so forth. I think you kind of get the point there. But yeah, so once I'm past the numbers, I would cut off the throttle. Once I cut off the throttle, so I would do something called or you do something called a round out, where essentially you just pull up just very slightly, just to at least round the plane out, and you were descending at 300 or 400 or whatever, however how quickly you were descending. So now you just want to slow down that rate of descent, and so bring it back down to, let's say, 100 or so, or even 0 if you possibly can. Cut the throttle, look towards the end of the runway, and then just let the plane just glide onto the runway, and just keep pulling it up as much as you need to, just to kind of keep that glide, and just to kind of keep the plane floating for as long as you possibly can get it, and that will pretty much always ensure that you have a smooth landing. So that's all I just wanted to say about touchdown. Yeah, and so after you round out, and you're looking at the end of the runway, and the plane starts to come down, what you're doing is a flare. So you're pulling up, you continue pulling the nose up, and it flares. And so if you do it in kind of that sequence where you're say like you're descending, and then once you're past your the point before your aiming point, you then cut the throttle, and then you round out. So like your descent rate will go something like that, and then it'll slow down, and then there may be a point where you don't descend at all, but because you've cut the throttle, and because the plane is beginning to slow down due to drag, it'll start to go down ever so slightly, and with you pulling back, you'll have a really smooth landing. And so if you do that, you're almost never going to balloon. However, if you come in for a landing, you don't do that round out portion, which I didn't used to do before, and you just try to flare because you still have so much speed that hasn't been bled off the plane yet, you'll have the tendency for the plane to just start trying to get back up and climb back up and start flying again. So, yeah, I mean, that's all there is to approach and landing. Some of the things I've learned, I'm passing on. And let me just see if there are any comments here. And there are none. So let's get back to, let's do that again.
Welcome back. We're to the northwest of Liverpool, this time to look at descending, approach and landing. We're flying straight and level in uncontrolled airspace at 100 knots. Maintain heading 090 and slow to 60 knots, keeping altitude 2,400 feet. Hold an altitude of 2,400 feet.
Okay, there we are. Okay, so holding altitude 2,400. What? Nothing is making sense to me right now. Okay, so we need to actually be climbing just a little bit. So we increase our throttle just a little bit more and get back onto our course.
Slow to 60 knots.
Okay, I guess we're slowing down. So another question I had a while back was how do you maintain your heading? And so that question was also answered. Just pick a building or pick a point in the distance that you're, once you verified your heading, pick a point in the distance and just aim for that point. And so for me, what I did during the last, the first, my mouse isn't here again. Can I point? No, I can't point. Okay. Anyways, yeah. I mean, for me, I'm trying to keep myself between I don't know if you can see it in the distance. Fortunately, I can't point to it, but there's a runway. Sorry, there's a highway to my, or there's a road to my left, and then to my right, there's a yellowish patch of land, and so I'm just trying to keep the
Staying
plane in
level at
between
2,400 feet, set
those two
flaps to
areas.
10 and see how the picture changes.
Okay, so we're pretty much level. Set flaps 10, and now because of the increase, again, wings are more
Maintaining
effective.
2,400 feet, see how the nose is lower as the flaps have made the wing more effective.
Yeah.
Now set flaps to 20 and see what changes.
Okay. Flaps 20. Again, we will have to, and because
Flaps add both lift and drag, so you need a little extra power to hold your speed. Now accelerate to 80 knots.
okay, now sorry,
Hold an
80
altitude
knots.
of 2,400 feet.
And again, because throttle controls your altitude, your altitude. Now we've increased throttle, so our altitude will want to increase, and so I'll just have to fight the plane a little bit just to keep it straight and level. I'm a little off course. Now I just need to trim myself out.
Now keep 80 knots and start a slow descent, only going down at about 400 feet per minute.
Okay, and so let's do that. Keeping 80 knots. So power, attitude, and then trim. So power was pulled back, then I pushed down, and so now I am trimming for this. And there we are.
Keep descending at 80 knots and 400 feet per minute. This is how we'll fly down the initial part of the approach.
I just want to keep this here just in case there's any... Oh, huh, interesting. I thought the chat wasn't visible from the Oculus. But I guess it is. Okay. Turn that off. That'd be a little annoying. Yeah, so see this road right to our left is what I was talking about, and then that little patch of kind of where this red dot is, that little patch in front of us was the yellow patch I was talking about, and then this is the road I was talking about right here. So
Now please maintain your rate of descent and extend full flaps.
okay, so my hand was off the yoke. Let's go back on the yoke, full flaps. As I mentioned before, because we will be extending more flaps, so we'll get lift. But because this will be full flaps, so they'll be a little bit more vertical in nature, and they'll slow us down. So, but all we really want is
Now
to
that
just
we've got full
maintain...
flaps, we have more lift and drag. Set and maintain a speed of 60 knots.
Yeah. And so in this case, we don't really need to maintain our speed. So I'm fine with us slowing down just a little bit. And I'll just trim to maintain that's too much, our rate of descent. Also, I will need to pull our throttle back just a little bit. So with the throttle going back, I'll need to pull up.
Good. Now holding 60 knots and a slow descent of 300 to 400 feet per minute. This is how we'd fly the end of the approach as we get close to landing. Get used to this attitude and power setting and keep descending further. So this is how things would look as we come in to land. But if things don't go well, we perform a go-around, where we apply full power and pitch up to start a climb. Make sure not to do this too aggressively, however. Let's practice a go-around. Set full power now and set the climb attitude.
Okay, so power, attitude, ever so
Use
gently.
right rudder to stay straight and keep climbing. Set flaps to 20.
There we are. And so now we will set flaps up. Otherwise, we won't be able to gain speed because that, especially that last set of flaps, will dramatically increase our drag and won't let us speed up. So flaps 10. Pitch up a little bit. Trim up a little bit more.
Finally, retract the flaps completely.
And there we are.
Good. Climb to 1,400 feet and get yourself straight and level at 100 knots.
Okay, there we are. Should be good enough. And let me...
Trim nose down to ease the control pressure as you stabilize at 100 knots with a straight and level attitude.
Yeah.
Now we'll head back to Liverpool and try a zone entry, approach and landing. Liverpool Golf Foxtrot Sierra Alpha Charlie, request VFR rejoin at Kirby.
Golf Alpha Charlie Liverpool radar, clear to enter controlled airspace at Kirby, not above 1,500 feet VFR. Squawk 5052, clearance limit, car factory.
Clear to enter, not above 1,500 feet VFR to car factory 5052 Golf Alpha Charlie. Turn right heading south. We're now looking to route to the car factory VRP, located just north of the airport.
So I turned a little bit early there.
Now continue south into the Liverpool control zone and you'll soon begin to see the factory as a large flat industrial building near to the airport. Visual reference points, VRPs, are local landmarks that give points of reference to VFR flights to easily communicate their positions. Chosen for their standout features, VRPs are shown on VFR maps. ATC assigned us a squawk code, which is entered into the transponder to label us on the ATC radar screen. Head south towards the car factory.
Okay, I found the car factory. We didn't veer off too far this time. I think I was much quicker in executing some of the some of the commands. So that should be the car factory in front of us.
On our way back, let's talk about the aiming point. Once established on the
there.
approach, we pick a spot on the runway and try to lock that point in the same place on our windscreen all the way down. It could be runway numbers, a touchdown marking, or something else. Continue on this heading of south and you should be able to see the car factory soon.
So I thought that was the car factory right there. I guess not. So, oh my god. No, we have veered off quite a bit once again. So, because that there looks like the airport, and so the car factory should be somewhere
Head south towards the car factory.
So again, what I'll do is just make sure I'm lined up properly. I will align us to the west. Sorry, I will fly heading northwest. And once I find the car factory, then I will go to south. So for any of you that are following or that are trying this lesson out on your own, that's what I recommend. I don't for some very odd reason, I think you go too far away from the car factory and it just gets a little tough trying to find it afterwards. So fix up my trim. So that I believe is a car factory right there. Yep, that should be the car factory. So now let's go on to heading us south. Yeah, for some odd reason I don't know what this thing is called, this instrument down here, but it's not working. I wonder why.
Maintain 1,400 feet.
Okay. So one other thing that's also important. So yes, you do want to try to make sure that you're turning at a standard one rate of turn. But another thing that's also important is just pick a especially in my case because it's not working. Just pick a point and just turn around that point. Especially this helps out if there's wind that's blowing that's blowing, because it will cause the aircraft to veer off path a little bit.
Golf Alpha Charlie, contact Liverpool Tower 126.355.
126.355 Golf Alpha Charlie. We'll report to ATC that we've reached our clearance limit at the car factory VRP. Golf Alpha Charlie, car factory.
Golf Alpha Charlie, make right orbit for traffic, call complete.
Right orbit Wilco, Golf Alpha Charlie. Start a 360 turn, known as an orbit, to the right as instructed by ATC.
So, so my turn indicator isn't working, but I just want to make sure my turn is coordinated. And so what I want to do is I just want to turn around this building here. Just make sure I keep it in my
The landing
sight.
attitude will be just like what we saw earlier, which we used to fly down towards our aiming point. As we cross the runway threshold, move your gaze to the far end of the runway and then use peripheral vision to judge your height. Then we'll pull the power back and raise the nose to the flare attitude, which is just enough to reduce your rate of descent and touch down on the main gear first. Then we'll smoothly allow the nose wheel to land and let your speed fall off with the power still at idle.
Yeah, and so a lot of stuff that he's already talked about, he's already explained, and I kind of just doubled and just added my own 2 cents to it earlier. So here we are, leveling out after keeping, or at least trying to keep the car factor in
Golf
sight.
Alpha Charlie orbit complete.
So what I'll do now is I will actually
Golf Alpha Charlie, enter right downwind, runway 27, number 1.
somewhat of a sharp
Right downwind, runway 27, Golf Alpha Charlie. Make a left turn here to fly heading 090, parallel to the runway. Descend down to 1,100 feet.
Okay.
Keep flying parallel at 1,100 feet until the runway threshold appears at a 45-degree angle behind you, over your right shoulder. I'll let you know when to turn.
Okay. And so now we're
Looking
better.
over your right shoulder, the threshold of the landing runway seems to be about 45 degrees behind us. Now's a good time to make our right-hand turn to start lining up with the runway. Start a gentle descent and start slowing to 80 knots.
Slowing to 80 knots, gotcha. That wing is blocking me.
Once your speed is down to within the white arc, take flaps 10 and hold 80 knots.
Okay.
We're in the white arc now, so set flaps to 10.
Okay.
Hold the speed of 80 knots with a gradual descent.
Yeah. And so we've done
now
a lot
take
better.
flaps 20, speed still at 80 knots.
Okay. There's the runway. Want to make sure we're descending decently well. And wow, there we are. That was a lot better than our first approach. And so my aiming point is those first markers there.
Golf Alpha Charlie cleared to land, runway 27, wind 250 at 4 knots.
Cleared land runway 27, Golf Alpha Charlie. Okay, we're cleared to land. Finally take flaps full and slow to 60 knots.
Okay, full flaps. And then we're aiming for 60 knots. A little slow. About 60. Again, once I get over the numbers, I will cut throttle, turn my gaze to the end
Power
of the runway.
to idle and set the flare attitude.
And okay, power idle. Look at the end of the runway, round out, let the plane bleed off speed, and then now flare. And just try to keep it in the air for as long as I possibly can. And boom, there we are.
Stay on the center line as you decelerate, then vacate at the first exit on your right.
I'm gonna set to about 1200 RPM and just wait until we get to that, so we can turn off. Should be, it's coming up, so let me just go to idle, apply a little bit of brakes, and then let's just turn right here. Quite a sharp turn, but this is flight sim, not real life. So, I don't know, for some reason he's not talking yet again. A little odd to me. Actually, let's go past these. Yeah, I don't know. I think I broke it again. So that is that. That is. I've improved a lot since last week, and so I'm quite happy with that. I'm quite happy with my improvement. Quite happy knowing that I now understand what an orbit is a lot better. Let me see if there are any comments. Otherwise, because I think we've been going for about an hour now. Otherwise, what I will do is I will end off here. Any comments, questions, criticisms, or things that I can improve on would be much appreciated. Otherwise, I will end off here, and I'll see you guys next week. I will have to double check what the next lesson is. Actually, I can just double check that now. So what is the next lesson? Oh, my favorite, circuits. So the next lesson will be some circuit training, and oh man, I actually love circuit work. So I'm excited for next week. I'm really, really excited for next week. So if there aren't any comments, which there doesn't seem to be, I'll end off there for this week. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you all next week. Take care, guys.